Alright, hi guys, welcome back to PKFX YouTube trading channel. So this will be our weekly game plan. Today is Saturday night for me and the market is currently closed, and I've already shortlisted my top few picks for the currency pairs over here to be analyzed at a higher time frame, at a weekly, daily and 4 hours, and see what is the potential moves that we can expect in the upcoming days when the market opens, right? Alright, so without further ado, let's start off with USDJPY. So USDJPY on a weekly basis, we can see that the weekly is bullish. So this is your higher high and this will be your higher low. And I can see that the EMA is growing over here towards the upside, coming pretty close to round psychological number of 154.000, and this area looks like a good support at a daily level. So at a bigger time frame, when I zoom out, ideally, because it has had a reasonably good amount of push towards the upside and the market is creating some sort of, you can see like a dome structure indicating that it's topping out, I was expecting some sort of a pullback. So far for the past 3 weeks it has been pulling back. Preferably a very deep pullback over here would be ideal before the market can continue going towards the upside as indicated by this blue line over here. But this is for the long-term perspective. So weekly is buy, and if I go to the daily candlesticks, if I zoom in, the daily candlesticks over here is a buy as well. So this is your higher high and this was the higher low. So far the higher low has not been broken, so the market technically is still bullish and all this is pretty much just consolidating. But I could see a very nice triangle pattern being formed over here, maintaining this base over here, and the daily EMA has also been building up, and now this is also coming in as a support in this box over here, right? The daily EMA is here and the round psychological number 158.000 is also acting as a support, and we can see that the last day the market closed with a very strong wick upwards. So the market actually attempted to break this daily EMA and the round psychological number as well as the support zone. It was trying to break it all the way, but it was not successful and the market pulled back and closed above here, which indicates to me that this is actually a very strong area for a support. And looking at the daily pattern over here, if this area continues to hold well, if it comes back and support and bounces back again, right? So instead of the long play over here, which we showed on the weekly basis, I would consider a buy trade over here itself. If I go to the 4-hour candlestick, the 4-hour is pretty much a sell. So this is your lower low and this was the lower high, which has not been broken so far, and the last candle when it closed, it tried to break and had a very strong push upwards. So any sort of push downwards, and if it rejects back again, now I'll consider for a buy over here. And this buy, I'm expecting this particular triangle to break, and if it breaks, this may continue its momentum upwards. So there is a chance that USDJPY, the Japanese yen, continue to become weaker against any other currency pairs, and it may just continue to rally upwards. So which means the USD is getting stronger as compared to the JPY. So either the market does this, or if the market successfully breaks down, then I expect the market to fall all the way down here where I can find some potential good trades for an entry for a buy for USDJPY. So that's USDJPY. Weekly is a buy, daily is a buy, and 4-hour is a sell. And if the market comes back here and rejects and move upwards, I'm looking for a buy for USDJPY. Now next, I would like to move to EUROJPY. EUROJPY, if I zoom in on the weekly, it's actually a buy, so it's bullish. And the last week, the market has actually formed a doji candle. So this usually indicates either an indecision or a reversal pattern, right, where the market has finally topped out and the next week candle may just print out to be bearish, and we have seen this pattern time and time again. So any strong upward candle followed by an indecision doji candle usually tends to push downwards. So this is what I'm expecting. Not necessarily it has to happen. As you know, the market can just continue to rally upwards. but the probability of it to have some sort of a correction coming back to this area, this good solid base where you can see quite a bit of structure over here, coming back to this area before the next leg up is highly likely. So weekly is a bullish, right, with the doji candle last week. And if I go to daily candlestick pattern, the daily is also bullish. So this is the lower high, sorry, this is the higher high, this is the higher low, and the market, as you can see, has already started pulling back. So right now, there is no area that I can draw above here which I can indicate as a support, or in this case would be a resistance. So I cannot draw a box over here, because if I zoom out, the market is essentially at the highest point out here. So there is no past history where I can look for structure points in order to draw, I would say, a resistance zone. Therefore, I would consider this trade to be a very risky trade, because I do not have a position where I can set my stop loss, right? But if I look at the daily, is a buy, the weekly is a buy, but if I go to the 4-hour candlesticks, the 4-hour has turned sell towards the end before the market closed, and in fact the 4-hour has actually closed below the 4-hour EMA as well. The last candle also tried to come above, but it also closed right below the EMA. So now I'm expecting the market to open. Obviously the market can do whatever it wants, but if I see the market pushing back up, this essentially, the box that I've drawn over here is a resistance area, previous support that has turned into a resistance. If this area being retested back again, now this, you can use it as some sort of a base in order to sell. But to do that, I want to see the market to durably come back up here and not break above and rally up, but to get rejected over here, come back down here and break again the 4-hour EMA and making that as a resistance as well. Now we have a reasonable reason, I would say, to short the market. But we gotta also understand that by shorting the market and to get a good risk to reward of 1 to 2, it has to pass through this daily support region, right? It has to break through this support region and not bounce up and continue to rally down in order to hit the TP. Now this, I would say, is a counter trend trade, because the weekly and the daily is bullish and you're trying to sell, so it's a counter trend trade, right? But if I zoom out, I'm expecting the market to come down anyway before I buy the pro trend trade. And if I zoom out again on the weekly, because of this doji pattern over here, kind of makes sense to me that, hey, we can actually look for a counter trend trade for a potential sell before the market goes for a potential buy, which is a pro trend trade. So that is EURJPY. Now moving forward, GBPAUD. Now GBPAUD is a bit tricky over here. It has had quite a reasonable amount of fall and very short-lived pullback. I was expecting a very strong pullback, at least up to this region, but no, the market continued to reverse back down and it just made a new lower low. So this is your lower low, this is your lower high, this was the previous lower low, and this was the previous lower high. So weekly is a sell, right? If I zoom in, weekly is a sell. It has clearly broken the 1.9000 region and continue to go down, right? Daily is a buy. This is your higher high, this is your higher low, this is the previous structure point, this was the previous low. So the daily has been making a higher high and higher low, right? At this point of time, the market was a sell, right? This was a sell, this was the lower low, this was the lower high, and then the moment the market closed this candle over here, breaking this lower high, this now became the higher high and it continued to rally and stopped over here as the higher high. Therefore, this is the higher low. So daily is a buy. So weekly is a sell, but daily is a buy, and it has been pulling backwards, and this area which was supposed to act as a support did not act as a support. It continued to break downwards. So because it went down, I'm expecting some sort of a pullback, this daily EMA to grow downwards, this 1.9000 also to hold as a support, right? 90000. So it's round psychological number, that's 9000, 1.9000, right? It's a round psychological number to act as a support. So sorry, in this case, act as a resistance. If the daily EMA continue to grow downwards, to act as a resistance, and this previous support area that was broken to be retested from below to act as a resistance, all these factors to allow the market to continue its downwards momentum following the pro trend trade of the weekly sell. This is my expectation over here. If I zoom in further to look into the 4-hour candlestick pattern, the 4-hour right now is a sell, but it doesn't matter if I need the market to continue to come up here to get rejected to go downwards, then the 4-hour will eventually turn into a buy before it goes to a sell. So if this plays out well, then probably by the time this rallies upwards, the 4-hour EMA will also come in as a resistance. So this is lining up as a good pro-trend trade. We will see how the market opens. Obviously, with all this news of the war and Strait of Hormuz being open and closed multiple times, last Friday they mentioned that the Straits of Hormuz has been opened back again, and now just a few hours ago they said that Iran has bombed a vessel and therefore it's closed back again. And we still have Sunday, don't know what Trump may do. So the news is literally haywire. The news is just everywhere. It's very hard to predict fundamentals right now. Therefore, the best thing to do is just stick with the charts. The market, when it opens, it could literally create a candle breaking through the stop loss and eventually just rallying upwards as well, or just straight up shoot TP as well. That's why we don't predict so much. It's all probability based. We list down all our pairs, whichever that when the market opens doesn't trade extremely and goes to one side or the other. We just see how the market opens, how the Asia session plays out, and when the London session and New York session comes in, when the volume kicks in, we see whichever pairs that is actually lining up to our probability direction, we go for that trade. Out of all these trades, at least 2 or 3 trades would actually line up to how we want, and we just focus on that trades, right? So that's why I don't list it as my top 1, top 2, top 3, because I have no clue how the market is going to open. So for this one, GBPAUD, essentially I'm trying to get for a sell. The weekly is a sell, the daily is a buy, the 4-hour is a sell. By the time the 4-hour comes above here, hopefully it will turn into a buy as well. So it will be a risky trade because the daily is a buy and the 4-hour is a buy and you're trying to sell. So it can have an immediate reaction to hit your stop loss. So we need to make sure that we give sufficient space for the stop loss. We will adjust accordingly when the market reaches that point. But any changes in the lower time frame will indicate a good entry point at this region. That is GBPAUD. Now moving on to EUROAUD. Okay, so EUROAUD on a weekly basis, this was the lower high, and all the way down here is the lower low. So the weekly is essentially a sell. Had a very small pullback. Again, it's pushing down for a sell. And if I look at the daily candlestick pattern, again, in this case, the daily, because of the pullback, the daily has been a buy, right? And it also have been having a reasonable pullback. It is now back to this area. Ideally, I want it to come back up over here and the EMA of the daily to come as a resistance and the round psychological number of 1.66 thousand to act as a resistance, and I get to actually sell the market, right? To follow the pro trend weekly sell. If I look at the 4-hour, right? The 4-hour is currently a sell. Obviously, if I'm gonna expect the market to rally up here, the 4-hour is also going to turn into a buy. So this is once again a risky trade as well. You may have the daily and the 4-hour to be a buy at this position, only the weekly as a sell, and you want to sell when the lower time frame shifts off, right? So risky trade, we got to set proper stop loss. And also another concern that I have is the 4-hour EMA has also been growing. By the time the market comes back up here, it has to break that, making that as a support. So you have to fight through that as well. So this trade, we can only know when the market opens and see how it reacts. However, if I go back to this daily candlestick, I also do see a buy potential over here. So it really depends on what the market does in this area. If by the time the market comes back over here, right, the daily EMA goes down over here and the daily candlesticks breaks and closes above the daily EMA, now you're looking for a buy, because now your daily EMA is going to act as a support, and you break this box over here and stay above and close above, the box itself is going to act as support, which is your previous resistance turning into a support, right? So two scenarios that can play out, and if this plays out, then I have a potential risk to reward 1 to 3 that I can buy. Why is it 1 to 3? Because I want to close it before the weekly EMA comes over here. This sort of pullback is a very strong pullback, and now I can expect the market to continue rallying downwards, right? So Really depends on how the market is going to react. I gotta see when the market opens. But yeah, Euro AUD, depending on how the market moves, either a buy or a sell. That is Euro AUD. Moving on to Euro GBP on a weekly scale. Now, Euro GBP, the market you can see actually made a beautiful head. Sorry, this is shoulder, this is head and shoulder. So it has made a head and shoulders pattern, and the pattern has actually broken clearly over here. So while the market was going over here, this was the higher high, higher low, higher high, and then it made another higher low. Instead of making a higher high, it made a lower high, and then the market broke over here, making a lower low. So the structure has been broken. The structure on the weekly has shifted from a buy to a sell, and this pullback essentially is testing the neckline. In fact, it broke above the neckline of the head and shoulders pattern, and now it's actually reversing. In fact, it made a nice push upwards, an indecision candle, and now pushing downwards. So this head and shoulders pattern and retest the neckline and pull down back again to continue rallying downwards can actually happen. However, I see the EMA of the weekly coming back up as well. So for me to be really confident that this long-term weekly head and shoulders pattern to play out, which is going to take a few weeks, the market has to continue to break downwards, retest this EMA, this weekly EMA, turn that into a resistance. Only then I'll be confident that it's rallying downwards, right? Otherwise, the market can always come down here. The weekly EMA can act as a support, and the market can just continue to rally upwards as well. So on a weekly now, this is your lower low, this is your lower high, right? So weekly is a sell. If I go to daily, daily is also a sell. This is your lower low, this is the lower high, and the market has pulled back quite significantly. So the weekly sell, the daily sell, I'm expecting for a quick sell as well, right? The 4-hour is a buy. This was the higher high, this was the higher low, and throughout over here, the market has been ranging without breaking either the highest point or the lowest point. So the 4-hour still remains as a buy, right? So this is a reasonable trade. Any sort of pullback over here, you can continue to consider for a sell if the lower time frames are all in sync for a sell, because I'm expecting this 4-hour EMA to now act as a resistance, and this daily structure over here, the D box that I've drawn over here, if I go back to the daily candlesticks, and let me just nicely zoom in, and you can see here the daily candlesticks, this area, this structure points, all this combined have made this area as a reasonable daily structure point, right? So any sort of retest, you can choose to sell it down here, and the TP, ideally you want to make it as short as possible, but this is very tight. The stop loss is only 19 pips. So risky trade, but can be done as well. Really depends on how the market opens. The last thing you know is that the market probably opens over here, up here, and the whole trade is gone, right? But if the market is still ranging, then this is a potential entry point over here. And if you choose to take this trade, you want to get out before, if I zoom in over here, before the weekly EMA comes in to act as a support. You want to get out over here, right? And let the market do whatever that it does later on, right? Okay, so that's EURGBP. I'm looking for a sell. Moving on, USDCAD. Alright, so USDCAD weekly is a buy. This is your higher high and this is your higher low. Market had a significant pullback, which I think is reasonable, coming and retesting this structure points over here, right? So this can act as a strong bounce. So this week I'm expecting for a buy, clearly retesting this previous structure point, and that will be a good buy. And I would say the weekly EMA is coming in over here. So as long as I'm exiting before the weekly EMA, that will be great. And the daily, technically right now is a sell, but why I'm interested in a buy, because I feel like this has been an extended rally downwards, and I see a good amount of wick over here indicating an indecision and a strong push towards the upside. The buyers are stepping in. So the daily EMA is also coming down here. So I want to be able to exit very quickly over here So it's a quick small trade over here that I'm looking at, just to buy this pullback, and I don't know what may happen thereafter. Either the market continue to rally upwards or it may sell down, but I see a pocket of entry over here, even though the daily is a sell. The 4 hours, right, same thing. The 4 hour is a sell, right? This is your lower high, sorry, this is your lower low, and this area over here is your lower high. So I've marked it clearly over here. And even the daily, the 4 hour EMA is coming down as a potential resistance. So you can see weekly is coming down, daily is coming down, and 4 hour EMA is also coming down. But I still have a pocket over here where the market can rally before it gets rejected and continue the downward momentum or something like that. So this against the 4 hour sell and daily sell, I'm trying to buy, which is a pro trend trade, but immediate smaller time frames, not weekly but daily and 4 hour, it's against that trend, which is a bit risky trade. But if I see the market continue to rally upwards, break this box and then retest this round psychological number of 1.37 thousand and then push upwards, that's my buy over there. Pretty tight area over here with just 32.6 pips. We will adjust the market as it moves. The market can literally just dump downwards and this trade will no longer be valid, right? So we gotta definitely see how the market moves. But USDCAD, I'm looking for a buy. Now I'll go to NZDCAD next on the weekly. Now NZDCAD on a weekly, the weekly, this was your buy. So this was the higher high and this was the higher low. The market did not break over here. So if I were to zoom in this particular candlesticks, if I really were to zoom in, you can see that this was the lower point, which I marked it as the weekly low, which this candle did not break. So there's still some space over here. So the weekly buy is still valid unless this weekly sell candle, this red candle closes below, then it turns into a sell. But because it did not close, so when I zoom back out, I can say that this is still the lower high. Sorry, this is the higher high, this is the higher low. This still holds as the higher low and the market trend is still a buy, right? That is the structure over here on the weekly. The daily candlestick is a buy. So this is the higher high and this is the higher low. So the daily is also a buy. The 4 hour, technically right now, the 4 hour is a sell. Now, I would say this is also another risky trade. I can see that there is a 4 hour structure being formed over here, right? And any sort of pullback you can consider to sell. Ideally, I do not want to trade with the 4 hour zone or area of interest or area of support or resistance, because the higher the time frame, the more effective the support or the resistance is. So the last thing I know, this can be easily invalidated, but I do see a very simple a very simple shoulder, head and shoulder. So this is again head and shoulders pattern, where the structure of this first shoulder has been broken by this head over here by closing below this structure points, turning it into a sell. It pulled back and broke below as well, again confirming this shoulder head shoulder pattern. So head and shoulder pattern is now valid. Any sort of pullback to retest the neckline would be a good consideration for a sell. Now, even though the head and shoulders pattern in a 4 hour can play out reasonably well, we got to understand, in order to have a good risk to reward, it has to pass through this next area of weekly support and resistance zone, which is a very strong area. The last thing we know, that it may just play out and eventually bounce and straight go and shoot to following the pro trend trade, which is the weekly and the daily buy, eventually hitting our stop loss. So we need to be very careful over here if we are taking this trade, and we should only risk the amount that we are willing to risk in this particular trade and try to play it safe over here. So that is NZDCAD for a sell. Moving on to GBPJPY. Now this is an interesting one, because I see the GBPJPY, even though the market is at the highest point pretty much for a very long time. If I zoom out, you can see the market is pretty much at a very, very high point, right? And if I zoom in, the last week has actually formed a doji candle, right? So time and time again, we are seeing this particular structure where we have a very strong candle upwards, an indecision candle doji, followed by a downward move, which very high chances of happening, right? So this is what I'm betting on. The market should be reversing over here. But because I do not have a proper structure, a proper weekly or daily resistance zone where I can set my stop loss in, this trade doesn't really make sense to me. And if I were to sell, I'm going for a counter trend trade, right? So it's very, very risky, and we gotta be very careful and look for a lot of confirmation before we enter this trade to be on the safe side, right? The daily candlesticks, this is the higher high, this is the higher low. So the daily is also a buy, and the daily EMA is coming back up here as well. If I look at the weekly just now, the weekly EMA, not to worry, it's further down over here, so I'm not really worried. The daily EMA is building the momentum towards the upside, so coming here. So if at all I want to take a trade, I want to make sure I close before I reach the EMA. So that's the plan. If I go to the 4-hour candle, and this is a good sign, the 4-hour is no longer bullish, the 4-hour is bearish. The 4-hour has actually created the dome structure and eventually fell back down, and now it closed below the EMA. I want the 4-hour candlesticks to break this daily support region, turning it into a resistance when it tests it from below to above, and confirming that this is a resistance. And only when it goes back down over here, this turns into a good 1 to 2 risk to reward trade. So I'm looking at GBPJPY, a counter trend trade for a good risk 1 to 2 risk to reward for a sell. Given that the market breaks below and reconfirms and continue to show its hand first that it's going downwards, then it's a good entry point over here. So the last thing we know is, as usual, because it's a JPY pair and JPY currency is currently getting weaker, so JPY against GBP, the GBP tend to become stronger against JPY, so the market can always continue to rally upwards, right? Nothing is is confirmed over here. Nothing is 100% when it comes to trading. We are just moving based on probability basis. So I'm expecting for a reasonable pull downwards before the market eventually continues the trend upwards, right? Because it is at its highest point. It's not an ideal trade, but I still see a potential trade over there. That is GBPJPY. Now moving on to USDCHF. Alright, so USDCHF, the weekly is a sell. Let me just zoom in here nicely. So this is the lower low, and this is the lower high. So I've drawn the lines over here. The weekly candlestick is a sell, had a very good pullback, and then came close to this weekly EMA and rejected, and now it's going downwards, and I'm expecting the market to continue its downtrend. The market, if I really zoom out, it's actually at the lowest point it has ever been for a very long time, ever since 2011, right? So ideally, same like the previous currency pair that I told you, that was at higher high, and this is at the lowest low point, right? So this sort of a pullback is good, but I believe the market is going to continue to rally downwards. The daily is a sell, clearly, right? This is the lower low, and this is the lower high, and it has broken the daily EMA, turning this into a potential resistance, right? So I'm expecting some sort of pullback. If I go to the 4-hour, it should be a sell. Yeah, the 4-hour is also a sell, right? I'm expecting some sort of pullback over here, and then to eventually rally downwards. Maybe it may not even come all the way up here, because the 4-hour EMA is also growing downwards. So it may just come and retest the 4-hour EMA, gets rejected, and rally downwards. I do see, I would say, the round psychological number of 78,500, 0.785000 to act as a resistance as well. So altogether, any sort of pullback, I would say, to this region, right, will be a good location. And if the lower time frames align, now the market will have to sell. That is my expectation. holding the daily EMA as a potential good resistance zone. So we'll see how the market opens. It will be sad if the market just drops all the way from here, because a pullback would mean a very good opportunity over here for USDCHF. So USDCHF weekly is a sell, daily is a sell, 4 hour is a sell, and I'm expecting for a pullback before I can sell. Moving on, NZDUSD. Now, New Zealand dollar USD, this one, the weekly is a sell. I can see this is the lower low and this is the lower high, right? And if I go to the daily currently had this triangle pattern that always tends to break to the upside, which it did, right? It did not have some sort of a retest, proper retest. I do see a retest, but in the form of wick. But eventually it held back up and the market continued to rally up, and only now it started to pull back. So because it has done this wick over here, this particular wick over here without any form of candle closure indicates that it has been having a very strong buying momentum. So I'm expecting a pullback to retest this daily EMA and confirm that as a support before the market continue to rally upwards. Ideally, we want the market to come back down to this zone or this zone before it resumes the upward rally. But looking at the current momentum, it's really hard to predict. So I'm looking for buy opportunities. The weekly currently is a sell. This is the lower low, this is the lower high. So I'm expecting some sort of a pullback at least up to here to confirm the 4 hour EMA, to confirm the daily EMA as well. See, the daily EMA is also coming back up here, right? That was the weekly EMA is also coming up here. So you can see all the weekly, the daily and the 4 hour is actually within the same zone over here. So I'm pretty sure that this area is probably gonna hold well. And if the market comes down here, holds and pushes back up here and breaks above this round psychological number of 0.59000, man, we have a good trade over here, where I believe the market can give me a good 1 to 2.5 risk to reward. So we'll see how this market opens, but NZDUSD, I'm looking for a buy. Moving on to CADJPY. If I go to the weekly candle, so higher time frame weekly candle is a buy. This is the higher high, this is the higher low. Had a reasonable pullback, retest and confirm this previous structure point, and now it's rallying upwards, right? Most probably it's going to continue to rally upwards and break this previous highest point and continue to rally, because the weekly is a buy. The daily is also a buy. This is the higher high, and if I go all the way down here, this is the higher low before it had a proper structure point. So daily also had a very strong pullback, created this triangle pattern. It broke, it retested the triangle pattern, confirmed it, and then broke out again and continued to rally upwards. So any sort of pullback, I believe, will just cause it to resume the upward rally. So I'm betting to go pro trend trade for this one. Weekly is a buy, daily is a buy. The 4 hour, in order to make the pullback right now, it is actually rallying upwards. In fact, I see here, this was the previous, let me zoom in so that we can clearly see this pattern. Sometimes we gotta zoom in the pattern to actually understand what is going on. So if you see this candle over here, this candle closed right below. You see this candle? It closed right below this candle. So if I were to put this previous 4 hour, you see the red candle has finally broken this line and closed below, therefore making this as the new lower low. So if I zoom out now, it makes sense that the 4 hour is a sell, right? This area was already broken and the previous structure has already been broken. So 4 hour is a sell. Now it's indicating to me some sort of a pullback is happening. So I would want the market to show me its hand first, to come back down over here and confirm the round psychological number of 115.000 to hold as a support and then bounce over here. Then I'm looking at a 1 to 2.6 risk to reward for this particular trade. We can adjust accordingly based on how the market moves, but CADJPY, I'm expecting for a pullback before I can buy and continue to rally upwards, right? And another one is EUROUSD. If I go to EUROUSD on a weekly basis, so if I zoom in, the weekly is a sell. This is the lower low. This is the lower high. So weekly is a sell, had a very good pullback, right? The daily is a buy. This is the higher high. This is the higher low. And now it's having some sort of hopefully a pullback. So any sort of pullback, if it comes down here, the daily EMA is also growing. So I'm hoping that this area will hold strong. Hopefully the round psychological number of 1.6000 holds as a support. The daily EMA holds as a support. The market to come back down here, confirm the daily EMA and then bounce back. And at that point of time, I could probably adjust this entry point to get a good 1 to 2 risk to reward. But this is actually not one of my best thought process for a trade, because in order to get a good 1 to 2 risk to reward, it has to break and pass through this region of resistance. It has to break through that, making it a support and continue to rally upwards. So it's kind of asking too much from the trade, because if I go to the weekly, basically what I'm trying to say is within the whole week, I want the candle to form over here, come back and create a good wick over here, and then continue to rally upwards, and then continue to rally upwards. So it can be that I'm asking too much from the candlestick. All we know is the market can have a continuous dump over here for this week, and then the weekly EMA to grow upwards, and only next week the market actually resumes the momentum upwards, right? So therefore, Euro USD is not one of my best trades over here. I'm looking forward to, but yeah, I'm looking for a buy for Euro USD. So those are the currency pairs. We can have a quick look at Bitcoin. So Bitcoin on a weekly candlestick. Let me just zoom over here. Okay. So Bitcoin on a weekly, this is the lower low and this is the lower high. So weekly is a sell, right? And daily is also a sell. This is the lowest point, lower low, and this is the lower high. Whatever that the market is doing right now is still considered a sell. And I was hoping that the market would rally upwards. However, any sort of rally, I believe, will come all the way up to this region, this box that I've drawn over here, which is within 86 to 87,000 max, and then eventually get rejected over here to continue the downward momentum. Now, only when the market closes above this D line that I've drawn at 89,302, right? If a daily candlestick closes above that, let's say 89,500, if it closes above that, the candle closure will now change the daily structure into a buy. Now we can look at a different point, at a weekly level, and say, hey, if I go in back to the weekly, right? The weekly candlestick is here at 93.688, right? So if the daily closes above here, right, it may just challenge and try to turn back the weekly into a buy. And if that happens, now the market has a lot of space to rally upwards as well. However, I gotta be honest that we are halfway through the bear market now, and this weekly EMA that is growing downwards will definitely most probably act as a resistance, and the market may buffer here because of all these structure points over here and the previous structure points over here, make this into a resistance and potentially continue its sell momentum downwards. This is what I'm looking at for Bitcoin, to have a continuous momentum downwards, because we are not in a bull market, it's just a temporary rally, and we are in a bear market and we are halfway through, and I expect the market to continue to sell towards the downwards, right? And that to play out may take a few weeks. So I'm looking at somewhere around May, June, July for the market to continue showing that weakness that it has. So that's Bitcoin, weekly sell, daily sell, in fact monthly is also a sell, therefore it's sell. So that's about it, guys. That is all the pairs. Now coming back again to very quickly run through. So USDJPY, I'm looking for a buy. EURJPY, I'm looking for a sell. GBPAUD, I'm looking for a sell. EURAUD, I'm looking for potentially a buy or a sell, because in the daily we have this EMA coming down. So this closure of the candle, the daily candle at this region over here, will indicate whether it's going to be a sell or a buy. If it closes below and make this EMA as a resistance, then it's a sell opportunity. And if it closes above, turning this EMA into a support, then it's a buy opportunity. Both has fantastic risk to reward, so I will see how it plays out. EURGBP, I'm looking for a sell for this market, right? USDCAD, I'm looking for a buy. NZDCAD, I'm looking for a sell. GBPJPY, I'm looking for a sell. USDCHF, I'm looking for a sell. NZDUSD, I'm looking for a buy. CADJPY, I'm looking for a buy. And finally, EUROUSD, also not the greatest trade out there, but I'm also looking for a pullback to have a good buy, right? So let me just adjust this something like this. Let it pull back first before I consider for a buy. So those are the currency pairs that I'm focusing on for next week. I do have a few other currency pairs that is not at the area that I'm interested in to take a buy or a sell. So I will let it play out. If it cooks well and if it presents an opportunity, then I'll make a separate video for that. But other than that, we have ample of currency pairs over here. Obviously, the market can open and do whatever it wants, but depending on the how the market opens, how the Asia session plays out, whichever out of all these trades lines up to the pattern that I'm looking for, if it lines up perfectly, then I'll go for the trades. So that's about it, guys. That's the weekly game plan for next week. Let's trade well when the market opens, and good luck, everyone. Thank you for your time. Have a good day.